Good afternoon and welcome to Lunchtime with me, Kevin Britz, leading the charge with insights, information, ultimately effective results. Joining me today's marketing and leadership segment, marketing communications expert and co-host Craig Page-Lee. How are you doing, Craig?
Kevin, I'm great. Yeah, thanks. Hope you're doing well. Really appreciating this lovely, cool, fresh weather that arrived unannounced yesterday. But sure, getting back to the show, just in case you didn't know, which I don't think you do, is that today's another good milestone for the show, 175th show. And 25 to go. I think it's somewhere mid-quarter one next year we'll have hit our 200th show.
Yeah, it's incredible. There are some stats out there that speak to successes of podcasts. From what I've heard is if you've got past like 25 episodes of your podcast, you definitely have a successful podcast. So, so the fact that we are still here doing what we're doing, something's working, and we're making it happen.
And again, as I was saying to you previously, at the 150th, it's a great chance to just absorb new content. For me to go and find the content, build the threads, and those incredible reports out there. We're learning constantly, and that's the beauty about it.
Yeah, exactly. I love that element of the show. I love the fact that we can do that. Greg, so I know that we're continuing from last week's conversation, but before we start, please share with us some context to the discussion that we had as a reminder to the listeners.
Yeah, Kevin, thanks. So last week we discussed very insightful excerpt from a book written by Brian Dodd, who's the author of the amazing Amazon best-selling book, Mighty 7 Skills You Need to Move from Pandemic to Progress. And the book references findings from Kevin Burrell, who's a good friend of Mr. Dodd. And Kevin Burrell's an area scout for the Chicago White Sox, which is a professional American baseball team. And through Kevin's in-depth analysis and evaluation of major league prospects, he identified 10 things which can disqualify from someone as a major league prospect. And through their conversations, Brian Dodd saw relevance on how those 10 things can actually also be disqualifiers for leadership. So the 10 things or points, which I call them, can also disqualify someone from leadership, were identified as follows. And we covered the first 5 last week. The first being lack of passion. You don't love or live the game or your organization's mission or vision. The second is lack of effort. This player did not run balls. You have poor body language. Effort is something you control. Point 3 is not coachable. Important point here. You have an ego problem and are not open to instruction. Point 4 is poor teammate. You're a high maintenance and bring other people down. Point 5 is struggle to make in-game adjustments. You are rigid. Again, a really important aspect or at least attribute for being a good leader. Immaturity is point 6. You are not mentally or emotionally ready for leadership. Point 7 is selfish. You want all the attention. Point 8 is unbalanced. You lack the fundamentals needed to lead. And I think there's quite a close correlation to rigidity there as well. Point 9 is bad attitude. Attitude is a choice. It also determines your altitude. You have low leadership ceiling. And the last point in the article is undisciplined. And it's the pain of discipline is always less than the pain of regret. And I really love that particular proposition. So as I said, we covered the first 5 points last week. I'm going to look at a few of the remaining 5 points in a bit more detail today, Kevin.
Fantastic. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I enjoyed last week, and I think I called it the list of leadership.
Yes, absolutely.
What are those points, Craig?
Yeah, so Kevin, just again, for each of the points we covered, I went and found other references from other articles to try and support the concepts of thinking. Quite interesting that in 1 or 2 areas it was really difficult to find direct reference in light of that principle, but I did manage to find some good content to build out those particular points. So let's start with point 6 today, which is immaturity. You are not mentally or emotionally ready for leadership. And for this point, I want to reference an interesting read that I came across on LinkedIn titled Navigating Immature Leadership A Journey Towards Growth. The article was written by Deanna Haysom and was published on the 7th of December 2023. The article opens with the following paragraph, Kevin. Leadership is a journey, and often that journey begins with immaturity. It's not a stain on character, but a crucial phase in the evolution of leaders. And I really love the positioning of that, because it tells us that there is a journey and there is an opportunity to grow in that journey to become an effective leader. And in the article, Deanne explores some of the nuances and common pitfalls of immature leadership and what some of the transformative steps are towards maturity. Starting with understanding immaturity, Deanne notes the following. Leadership is not an inherent skill. It is cultivated through experience, training, and knowledge, the very stuff that you deliver daily. Immature leaders grapple with the complexities of team dynamics and organizational challenges. Everyone was there at one point of their leadership journey. Recognizing this phase as a developmental opportunity rather than a permanent flaw is crucial for any leader, Kevin.
Craig, from a coaching perspective, the one that comes to mind very obviously and quite quickly around this point is transaction analysis. And when you consider your ego states, your parent, your adult, and your child sort of ego states, we all have them. And through communication and through intentional approach in how you use language and how you elicit information or share information will really dictate on what it is you're eliciting from your counterparts, right? So, ego state in itself, if you come through as a critical parent, and this is where the immaturity part comes in, because you're suddenly a leader, and then you make the assumption that, I've got to manage these people and get them into a line.
Yes.
Let's get to what we're supposed to be doing. And then your approach is critical parent, but a critical parent very often elicits a child response, right? So that's where the immaturity comes from. When you really understand the ego state, you kind of go, okay, as an adult, I need to speak to an adult. And when we are speaking adult to adult, some people refer to it as royalty to royalty. The conversation changes.
Yes.
And how the conversation is managed is far better than eliciting, a parent response.
Parent to child response, sure.
Right. And it can be very useful in different scenarios, and because, you can be a nurturing parent, and that's a good thing, but also a nurturing parent sometimes falls into the trap of always rescuing his or their counterpart. And that's not necessarily useful, because then you're not actually teaching them a skill on survival.
Yeah.
And the maturity levels of understanding your maturity is unbelievably important.
Yeah, fantastic. So the flip side of that is common pitfalls. And we note from Deanne's article the following. Immature leaders often exhibit counterproductive behaviors, responding with know-it-all attitude, frustration, sometimes anger, and very often micromanagement. These tendencies, while detrimental, stem from this lack of understanding and experience, and importantly, recognizing these pitfalls is the first step towards growth, Kevin.
Craig, when people micromanage, I've got maybe two questions for them, right? As humans, what are you scared of, right? Because if you had to go to the degree of micromanaging a process, you're scared of something. You're scared that something is going to happen, right? So because you're trying to create certainty for yourself. So if you can manage the process or the person to that degree, then you create a sense of certainty for yourself. So what are you scared of? And second to micromanagement is, what is that feeding? Right? If I can micromanage the hell out of you, and I don't have the ability to trust you to do something, what are you feeding? What is the monster you're feeding? Because essentially you're feeding something, you're getting something out of it, right? And that's what people don't know about micromanagement. They doing the job, and you're kind of going, no, you're actually just feeding something that's quite unhealthy and eliciting a very unhealthy response out of people. Yeah. So it's quite interesting as a dynamic in an organization.
Now, all of that comes together in 5 points that Deanne actually references or describes as the path to maturity for leaders. And we learn the following from these 5 points, Kevin. The first is to embrace humility. I think we should also have humanity. Mature leaders understand the power of humility. Admitting that you don't know everything is the foundation of growth. When you're able to look in the mirror and go, I don't know everything, that's a good starting point. Acknowledging your limitations and be open to continuous learning. The second is to seek mentorship. Mentorship is a beacon in the journey to maturity. Surround yourself with mentors who have navigated the challenges you face. Great exact point reference there. The guidance provides invaluable insights and helps you make informed decisions. The third is practice empathy. Effective leadership hinges on empathy, and you talk about this often, Kevin. Immature leaders often struggle to understand their team's perspectives. Embracing empathy fosters a culture of understanding, of trust, and most importantly, of collaboration. The fourth is reflection time. Again, schedule regular moments of self-reflection. Analyze your decisions and actions and the impact on you and the team. Then learn from both successes and failures, cultivating this mindset of continuous improvement. And the final point here about maturity leadership growth path is no excuses. Maturity means taking ownership. Resist the urge to make excuses for mistakes. Accept responsibility for the outcomes, especially when they fall short. This accountability builds trust and respect within your team, which ultimately leads to retention of staff, which, you know, is definitely an important area to focus on as a leader, Kevin.
Craig, just a point on practicing empathy, and people get this so wrong because because it's been such a big conversation for so long already. They kind of think, oh, it's that tick box exercise where I have to just sit and listen and say, okay, cool, thanks, I hear you, I understand. And very often when we experience someone who has the lack of empathy, I very often look at that and look into the situation and ask the question, you know, does this person know better? Because if they don't know better, they can't do better, right?
Yeah.
It does not excuse bad behavior. So it becomes a very gray area. But if you're experiencing someone to that degree that just simply does not have the ability to show empathy, they simply may not know how to.
Yeah.
That is an EQ, you know, emotional intelligence that you're struggling with, or that you actually have some kind of trauma-related response to.
Yeah.
You know, so it's when people respond like that, you need to ask a bigger question, because there might be something wrong that we're not aware of.
Yes, absolutely. Kevin, moving to point 7 of the 10 things, this being selfish, you want all the attention. And this is very much where the ego aspect comes to play. For this point, I want to reference an article I came across on brainsmagazine.com titled Selfless or Selfish Leader. Which do you prefer? Really interesting conundrum for some. The article was written by Teresa Devine, who's an executive contributor to Brain Magazine, and was published this year, 19th of January. The article references the key difference between selfish and selfless leaders and provides a brief definition as follows. The term selfless leader describes a person who leads from a position with less emphasis on themselves. Inversely, the term selfish leader is a person who leads with more emphasis on themselves. And as we know, there are many philosophies and approaches to leadership, and some really deep debates around which attributes describe the best leader, either on the selfless spectrum or on the selfish spectrum.
Yeah, and you know, Craig, I'm not going to even go into it, but when you look at the context, because it becomes so layered and it becomes so. There's so many layers of reasoning why people show up and behave a certain way. You know, I immediately think of Enneagram types 3. You know, they're competitive achievers, right? And as a competitive achiever, you will achieve at whoever's peril.
Yes.
You know, who's in the way, I'm going to do it. I'm going to make it work. I'm going to achieve. but it's built into their instinct for them to want to achieve. So it's not an alarming position to be in, but it is a position that they naturally prone to want to take. But the second level to that is also the consideration about your own human needs, right? So when I'm taking a selfish approach, I usually create certainty for myself. But with that, I'm also creating unbelievable significance for myself.
Right.
And the flip point, the flip side of that is, why are you using selfishness to create significance for yourself? Do you have a lack of significance? Right? So it's the inverse of that, right? If I'm all about me all the time, you have to ask yourself, Shane, maybe this person feels very insignificant. And that's the question people don't want to hear, especially in this context.
Yes.
So it's a really layered reasoning and unpacking, and leaders with big brass iron balls to be able to unpack that, because that's a difficult conversation to have. It's possible to get to see it from a different perspective.
Yeah. Okay. But let's look at each of those two leadership styles and what they consist of. And for me, having read through, it's definitely why I don't want to be a selfish leader. Yeah. So starting with the selfish leader, we note the following: prioritizes their needs first above the organization and others, with more focus on personal advancement or gains. Carries an unbalanced concentration on pleasing the boss or board members who control their career destiny, causing bias and indecision. Second point here: lack confidence in their team's ability to do the job without justification. They refuse to release control, creating a dysfunctional, stagnant, and paranoid work environment. Point 3 is the bias towards partnering or hiring their buddies versus vetting out the best qualified. See and hear about this every day. Less focused on the greater good and more on what's in it for me and mine approach. The fourth point here of selfish leader is take credit for ideas and work of others, and seldom recognizes the team members who deserve the glory. They boast about their progress and seek validation from others, and they pursue climbing the corporate ladder at any cost. And the final point on the selfish leader is they see colleagues as a competitor and limit growth opportunities for their direct reports, fearing being replaced. They don't focus on developing leaders and remaining content with their status quo. The flip side is the positive side, the selfless leader. And the 5 points we note about selfless leader is they firstly prioritize the needs of others above their own and have a vision of building a stronger organization for everyone, Kevin. They focus on team members, on shareholders, on board members above their personal interests or gains. The second point is that they trust their team to do the job, the big trust word. Trust is a selfless act of releasing control to empower others to perform at their best, as well as to learn from their mistakes along the way. Third point is they sacrifice for the greater good. All selfless leaders will make a judgment call, risking personal gain, but they recognize it's the right thing to do for the benefit of all, and integrity never wavers. And for me, that's probably one of the most important points. The fourth point here is humble themselves to give glory where it's due. They realize they cannot do anything without a team, and they publicly acknowledge it. And the fifth attribute of a selfless leader here is they focus on creating leaders versus followers. Lovely point. They identify those who are eager to grow and help them develop the same leadership principles towards success. And they constantly scan to find opportunities to promote others. And it's obvious from these two comparisons that we really should be striving to be selfless leaders, Kevin.
Yeah, and Craig, but what's also beautiful, when you recognize the selfless leader, it's a physical behavior. You start seeing that people, just recognition, the ability to see when others do well, or the ability to say and put up your hand and go, because I don't know what the answer is, right?
Yes.
And allowing space for others to, inform and share and collaborate and shine, right? It's when you see, especially when you're working with big organizations, and because they tend to because of the title, they tend to just overrule, right? But a great leader who is selfless stands out like the brightest in the room when they do these things, and they make space for other people to be seen.
To nurture and grow, and yeah.
Yeah, it's a beautiful approach.
Absolutely. Kevin, point 8 is unbalanced. You lack the fundamentals needed to lead. There's a lot of similarity across some of the points here, so I'm not going to unpack that in further detail, but I'm going to jump to point 9, which is bad attitude. Attitude is a choice. It also determines your altitude, and you have a low leadership ceiling. And I really thought this is one that we need to look at in a bit more detail. So, yeah, for me, it's a point that's important for not just leaders, but all of us in our businesses and personal lives as well, Kevin. And for this point, I want to reference an article I came across on spj.net, which is an independent and custom publishing company. The article was written by Mark Holmes of Business Shifts and is titled 6 Ways Leaders Can Avoid a Bad Attitude. The article was published on the opinion column of spj.net on 9 March 2020. Now, interesting, some of our leaders, at least listeners, may think, why are we referencing articles from 2020? This is a timeless piece, and in that some of the principles that are spoken about in the article absolutely remain resolute and relevant for decades, and therefore can be included in the conversation today, Kevin. And by saying that, I want to open with what the article states. Negative attitudes frequently occur in management ranks. When a leader is the one with a bad mood, the impact can be severe. Not only is it contagious, but it can lower employee morale, increase staff turnover, lower productivity, and harm the customer's experience. Yeah, 2022, 2024, 2025, that statement has relevance irrespective. The article goes on to note that our attitude primarily reflects how we think and feel about life, and our behaviors towards something or someone exposes the inner thoughts and feelings. Fortunately, our outlook is not a fixed state, which is a great point to note. And we have the power to choose our outlook on work and life every day. And this is why I say it's got a beautiful reference across everything we do, not just in the workplace.
Craig, I just want to, just a quick mention is, what I find interesting is when people look at what I do or what you do, for example, people always, they have the wonderment of asking, how do you get it right? How do you do what you do, right? Because it's not like you and I have loads of people that we rely on, or teams of people that we can just turn to.
And good point.
It does have to do with your attitude, right? Attitude is a choice, and it really does determine your altitude. I mean, we've been working on this show for 2 years already, and single-handedly, probably I can count on one hand the amount of times that I've heard you complain about anything.
Yeah, wow.
So maybe I don't know if you've heard me complain. I probably do, but essentially, it's not in our DNA to complain.
And you're absolutely right. And from your side, if there is a complaint, it's contextualized around what the prohibitors are in being able to go through to endpoints and something. Yes, as opposed to just a lucid throwaway miserable comment. Yes.
Yeah. So it really does impact altitude. So to me, I kind of go, with the right attitude, you can achieve anything.
Oh, absolutely, Kevin. Absolutely. Yeah, it definitely has been a big driver in my life and getting me to where I am at this point in time. So let's have a look at the insights that inform us that leaders need to come to terms with their attitudes and learn how to manage them, Kevin. And the first approach really is to understand the following 6 things from the article, and these are the things to avoid in leadership. The first starting with inaction. So when leaders procrastinate, Kevin, they're not taking decisive action, they're decreasing momentum. It can all create a bad business lethargy or what's the use attitude amongst employees. Employees, shareholders, cohorts in the business want leaders to be proactive, and they want them to make the necessary improvements to guide and lead the business to the next stage of success. The second point is perfectionist. And as I go through these 6 points, I'm sure you can just immediately draw reference to some of those people that you work with who portray some of these characteristics. Perfectionist is about imposing the burden of perfectionist on ourselves and others. And this definitely is damaging, in my opinion, at times more so for others, because they don't understand the consequence of that behavior, whereas the one who's imposing it is in many instances actually quite aware of that consequence, but they seem to work past it. Given some bosses are obsessed with perfection and are obviously nearly impossible to please. I've come across one or two in my life. Unfortunately, the key learnings we get from them is generally, I should say, fortunately, the key learnings is generally what not to do, but we can navigate around that. And the direct impact on a daily basis is that they impose a burden on their employees. And at the end of the day, employees just don't want to go to work because they don't have the energy and appetite and excitement to be in that work environment anymore. Yeah. The third point is pessimistic. Leaders that have a tough time seeing any positivity in continually changing business environment and landscape definitely affect employees negatively, and they often affecting the work routines and causing them to becoming disencouraged and also decoupled. Because if there's a breakdown and the fluidity of being able to resolve through changing business environment, and you impacting negatively on your teams, you're going to break the linkages, and the beautiful streamlined flow of business is not going to be in place. Employees don't appreciate a pessimistic view. The wise leader will make sure that they see and regularly communicate the brighter side of things. And I really like that closing statement there.
Craig, just on that, on pessimism, what we mustn't forget, especially if you are someone who leads a lot of people and you do have a pessimistic approach to things, people model behavior. So if you're doing it as the leader, there's absolutely no reason why your organization or the people you're leading won't do it, right? They'll just model your behavior. They'll model like, well, this is how we show up. We take time to complain. We take time to see the worst in everything, and and it skews attitude, it skews choices, and with longevity in that, people just leave people. Like, you just have people resigning, and you're going, why is everyone resigning? And you're going, well, they're leaving you.
Yeah.
So pessimism is a terrible thing.
Yeah. Why do good people leave? Because they can. Yeah, exactly that. Yeah. The fourth point here is blaming others. Gosh. And it's easy to criticize and condemn others, especially when we fail to examine our part in the problem. And this is that importance of being able to leave the situation for a while, take account of what led to the situation, what your reactions and responses were, and move through that. But for those who fail to do that, the blame game remains. Before blaming someone, look into all the possible sources of recurring issues, such as flawed processes, policies, or equipment, or even leadership style. When employees see the leaders admit to their shortcomings, it definitely helps them take greater ownership of the outcomes, Kevin.
Yeah.
Point 5 here is undervaluing people. Really important point. All too often, leaders demonstrate capability in knowing the numbers of the business, but definitely demonstrate no capability in being able to actually tell you anything special or meaningful about the personal lives of their long-term employees, Kevin. So unfortunately, this lack of engagement definitely makes it look like leaders only care about themselves and the numbers. The key learning here is that employees not only enjoy the attention given, but also thrive in their roles when leaders take a caring interest and have engaging discussions on a human level. Point 6 we've got is stuck in a rut. So employees want their leaders to ditch the status quo of, I've always done it that way and it worked out fine, or I can't see why changing now will accomplish anything different. They want their leaders to thrive and being in an adaptive organization. The key learning here is to be proactive and willing to take the necessary steps for the organization to be on pace with change in that ever-evolving business environment.
Craig, what's interesting just about the stuck in a rut position is a lot of, when you're stuck, if you don't have tools, if you don't have a model, if you don't have a frame, if you don't have a coach, if you don't have an option on how to potentially get unstuck, you'll just stay there, right?
Sure.
And if you do it long enough, you'll create a habit out of being stuck. It is, when you see people who, I've done a coaching, sort of an executive coaching process with an executive who is the head of this business. And she was just stuck in her story. She was so stuck in the drama and the reality of having the drama that no matter what homework I gave her, no matter what process I gave her, her reality said, no, if this doesn't happen this way, I can't function, right? So that's what I'm saying. If you're not sure about your stuckness can become that you can fuel it by becoming an identity of stuckness, and that's why people just stay in roles and lives and situations forever. They'll be there for 25 years. They'll always complain about the work, and they'll always hate everybody. And you go, okay, but why don't you leave? And they don't have an answer for that.
Yeah.
Well, it's a choice. It's your stuckness has become your habit, and your habits become your identity.
Yeah, definitely. Kevin, and the final point here, just as we're nearing the end of the show, is undisciplined. Yeah, and here the pain of discipline is always less than the pain of regret. I think that we could probably have an entire show on the principle of discipline, I reckon.
Absolutely. I always it's the one thing that my father taught me, and I've never loved to I've never been someone who's very disciplined at doing anything until I owned a business. And I was like, I'll just wing it. And essentially, by being disciplined, what I've now, being on this side of 10 years of running a business, you kind of realize that I would have had such regret if I didn't make the efforts and do the things that I chose to do and stick to it. Like this morning, I needed to complete some work, and I was up at 6 doing it, getting it done, making sure that I was in time for this conversation. And it's that discipline that it's, and people have noticed that, when I say I'm going to get stuff done, I'll get it done, and it's never late.
Yeah.
Purely based on the fact that I know that it's the standard at which I choose to show up. And very often you can tell when people are constantly late, or they're constantly this, they constantly, like, it sort of creeps into your whole way of being. And the last thing I'll say about it is, someone once told me, and I lived my life by this: the way you do one thing is the way you do everything.
Yeah, sure.
That's a big statement.
That's such a powerful statement, though, hey?
But if you think of it, think of are you really disciplined? Are you really disciplined? You kind of go, well, if the way you do one thing is how you do everything, it's probably how you do everything, right? So you have to then start questioning, how do I do everything? It's a really,
hopefully not in a pessimistic way. Hopefully not in an ill-disciplined way. Hopefully not in a stuck in the rut way. Hopefully not blaming others. Yeah, Kevin.
So yeah, Craig. So I love this, and I think it's a beautiful list of what leadership should not be.
Yes.
Like you have joined us. Thank you for joining us, and check it out last week and this week. Craig and I have really unpacked this to a large degree. But I thought we'd just find a sort of a quote for the day on mindset. And attitudes is a choice, and it always determines your altitude. Your mindset shapes your journey. Choose wisely, and you can soar to incredible heights. And that's from an unknown. But essentially, I think that's the one that sticks with me, right?
That's directly the attitude altitude reference right there.
Exactly.
That's fantastic.
Thank you so much, Craig. I love this conversation, as I'm sure you could tell. And yeah, we're going to be. Do we know what's coming up next week?
I sort of gave a little teaser on that in point 10. There is, I want us to focus on the principle of discipline, both from a leadership point of view, but in our personal lives. And actually, I'm going to see how I can sort of augment a bit of that into the world of communications and marketing as well.
Fantastic.
But it's such a strong driver of the success of so many.
Absolutely. Guys, please remember to like and share and tune in to Lunchtime series every Wednesday and Thursday for myself and Craig. Have a fantastic week. Craig, thanks so much, and I will chat to you soon.
Yeah, look forward to that, Kevin. Have a good week. Thanks.
Bye.